Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from deep inside the heart of the future Liberty State. Brought to you once again by On Fire Ministries, in the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news, where it's not about right or left, it's about right and wrong. It's about our hope not being in man, but in Jesus Christ. About not ending in prayer, but moving to action. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Father, deliver us from the evil one.
Welcome to Patriot Radio.
This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, a briefing today on communism. And our guest, Trevor Loudon, the foremost expert in America on the covert influence and infiltration of communism into mainstream American politics. I want to say a very special thank you to all of our new Patriot TV viewers. We are now on Patriot TV, broadcasting 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday and Sunday. Here at Patriot Radio, our mission is to prepare you and your family for the times ahead so that you have all the information you need to know before anyone else. But no fear, we were made for this. Also, if you get the opportunity, and many of you have been asking for us, or for this from us, we have a Telegram channel that gives real-time intelligence analysis and breaking news. You can find us on Telegram at Patriot Radio US. Also, you can subscribe to us on Rumble at Patriot Radio US as well. Today, there is a push by communism and communists under many different guises. Sometimes they wear suits, sometimes they're in the streets. But the push is the same, and that is to destroy the United States of America. And our encouraging word from Scripture today actually comes out of 1 Timothy, where we have a scripture that specifically says that we should reject the antithesis. And that's what it says in the Greek, that we should not fall prey to these arguments. But if you go deeper, it's the antithesis. In other words, it's the opposite of all that is right and good in this world. Now, Hegel was I would call him, a third-rate philosopher who Marx followed up on. And Karl Marx took what was known as the Hegelian dialectic and really mainstreamed it. But the dialectic is very simply this. There is a truth, a morality, and particularly grounded in Western civilization. That truth or morality is negated by an antithesis. Now, negated just simply means it's canceled out. It's the attempt to nullify it. And so if you understand this, you understand that we actually have a positive affirmative duty from Scripture to come against an antithesis and to stand for the truth is in the Word of God. Which brings us now to a briefing today, a very special briefing. You're going to want to bookmark this episode. You're going to want to refer back to this. This is a briefing that I've done all over the country on communism, the roots of communism, but also putting into very simple terms what we are coming against, and using some very smart people who have written about this subject to make it so clear for each one of us that we can spot the incidences of communism, however subtle they may be. So there are 3 counter states that are attempting to destroy the United States of America and to overthrow the Constitution. Now, some of these do not advocate, at least outright, violent overthrow, but they certainly, through their words, their actions, their articles, their videos, their trainings, advocate the overthrow of the Constitution of America. And you can see these people because they have an anti-Christian bent. They claim that patriots, or those who think the Constitution means what it says, are the enemies of the country. Well, that's because actually they are. And many of them are funded, as you're going to hear from our guest today, by adversaries of the United States of America, primarily Iran, China, North Korea, and Russia. But all of these share something in common, including Iran. They share a root in communism. And you'll notice that even some of their proxies, like Hezbollah, have a, quote, secretary general. That is a communist term. You'll also note that in wars like Iraq in 2003, when the U.S. invaded, there were communist flags being flown as U.S. troops went into Baghdad. Because most people didn't know that the Ba'ath Party, who Saddam Hussein belonged to, was a communist party. That Bashar al-Assad in Syria also belonged to the same Ba'ath Party, a communist party. So there is a red-green axis here. We're going to get into this. A communist and jihadi combination that is attempting to overthrow the United States of America. So the counter states are three. Number one, the globalists. And right now, what you are seeing is a war between Western globalists and Eastern globalists, primarily surrounding China and Russia. The second counter state are the communists, and the third counter state are the jihadis. Now, Rich Higgins, who was a strategic planner for the National Security Council under President Trump, wrote President Trump a memorandum. You can see this online. I think it's like 8 or 9 pages. Very easy read. And I would recommend that all of you read this memorandum, because when you have a strategic planner for the National Security Council who has a huge pedigree in irregular warfare and understands the threat to the United States, write the president a memorandum. And the memorandum very clearly spells out what is coming against this country. We should pay attention. And here's what the memorandum says in part. Attacks on President Trump are not just about destroying him, but also about destroying the vision of America that led to his election. So now we have a purpose behind the attacks. Hence, the end state is not just a delegitimized, destabilized, immobilized, and possibly destroyed presidency, but also a demoralized movement composed of a large enough bloc to elect a president that subsequently became self-aware of its own disenfranchisement. In other words, their goal is to disenfranchise, to demoralize MAGA. Now, the primary line of effort that is outlined by Rich Higgins in this memo of the counter states is political warfare. Now, there's other lines of effort, and I'm going to get to that here in a second, but it's political warfare understood by a Maoist insurgency model, and I'm going to describe exactly what that means. And the idea behind this warfare is to synchronize violent action, which we saw in 2020, with nonviolent action, political actors giving a cover for that violent action. And as a result of that, the United States policies and rhino Republicans who fall prey to this keep shifting the United States to the left. So these counter states, they are primarily formed to seize power. And this is such an important point to understand. This is not people that are stupid. Most of them are Harvard, Yale graduates, Ivy League graduates. They are not incompetent. They know exactly what they are doing. And it is wrong for all of us to call them stupid or incompetent when this is actually an intentional plan. So this gets to the two political parties. And I want to read the further analysis of Rich Higgins here, that the primary counter-state enabler that executes, sustains, and protects cultural Marxist programs of action and facilitates the relentless expansion of the deep state is Democrat leadership. He then went on, though, to explain Republicans. And most of you are going to go, wow, this is accurate. Remember, this is 2017. Lacking the discernment to recognize their situation, they will work with globalist corporatists and the international financial interests and will likewise service the deep state. These establishment Republicans are the hard left's designated defeat mechanism in the destruction of the old regime as well as the American ideal. In other words, establishment Republicans are counted on to fold at exactly the wrong moment for us as Americans. This is why when people ask me, what is Mike Pence going to do back in 2020? I said, I think he's going to fold. And the reason I said that is because he is he was a designated defeat mechanism for the hard left. So that brings us to this idea of the Maoist insurgency model. This is their strategy. We've now heard the purpose, kind of the structure of how this operates. Now, this is the Maoist insurgency model as outlined by Thomas A. Marks, with a K, not an X, just so we're clear there. The first part of this 5-part model is what's called the mass line. These are the things that we see in the media. These are the hate speech narratives, the attacks on culture, the demonization of Christianity that you see everywhere right now. This is where they have been saying recently that, conservatives are weird or patriots are weird when in fact they're the weirdos, right? These are narratives that are parroted across a mass line. These are parroted across different places. And this really came to my attention and really impacted me when I saw on CNN at an airport. I didn't really want to watch it, but I saw on CNN at an airport down in Atlanta, Georgia, that they were calling people Easter worshipers. And then I fly to Seattle and I see on the local news that they're calling people Easter worshipers. And I'm like, what is that? How do they have the same narrative across the entire country like that? Because it's part of a mass line. They have a central repository of talking points that is loosed through all of their organizations as an attack vector against Christians and patriots. The second is the United Front. This is where organizations that seemingly should be opposed to each other come together as a united front. Probably the best example of this is called the Squad. You have communists, Marxists, Democrats, socialists on the same stage as you have those who are connected to jihadis. This is the red-green axis as a front organization. At the international level, you have something called the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which is the largest voting bloc in the United Nations. And then the second largest voting bloc is the Socialist International, which incidentally, the current Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, used to be the head of. So those are the two largest voting blocs in the United Nations, which is why they continually pass resolutions against Israel, but not against states like Iran or North Korea. Now, the third part of the Maoist insurgency model is military, or some people call political violence. There's no real political violence. Violence is violence. These are military lines of operation, and the Muslim Brotherhood has what's called the Special Section. You have Antifa, the SRA, that's the Socialist Rifle Association, Redneck Revolt, the John Brown Gun Club, etc., that were the ones that participated, at least some of them anyway, in the riots that we saw in the United States back in 2020. So some of these organizations would claim that they're not about violence, but you read their documentation, some of the guerrilla manuals that they've posted, and then you begin to understand that this is part of the violent action, and then you have the political side, which is the nonviolent side, giving imprimatur or a stamp of legitimacy to what's happening so that the needle continues to move to the left. So the political warfare is the fourth part of this, and you can see propaganda as part of this. This is deliberate label lynching and manipulation, where they try to target an individual and try to smear them so badly that nobody wants to have anything to do with them. This also involves infiltration and subversion of political parties, political campaigns, so that they extend influence and cause division. This happens inside the Republican Party. And then fifth is international action. And I already mentioned part of this, and that is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC, and also the Socialist International. So these 5 parts of the Maoist insurgency model or strategy are how the counter states attack us. And the problem is, with Christians, we hear pastors saying that political issues are supposed to be verboten. They're supposed to be, well, We just can't touch it because it would be unchristian to do so. When in fact, we are literally ceding a battlefield to the enemy by doing that, number one. And number two, we're really preaching a heresy. And the heresy, and I don't use that word lightly, and the heresy is the idea that Jesus Christ has given part of this world to the enemy and that he doesn't want to redeem that part of the world, that part of the world is owned by darkness, which is clearly against Scripture.
Hey folks, it's your buddy John Rich here and co-founder of Old Glory Bank. Let me ask you a question. Why would you trust your banking with people that hate you? Well, you shouldn't. We're building a freedom economy, and now we have a pro-America bank. It's called Old Glory Bank. Check it out at oldglorybank.com and open yourself an account today.
Old Glory Bank is a full-service, FDIC-insured online bank with business and consumer banking and customers in all 50 states. It takes just 8 minutes to open an account at oldglorybank.com.
The Donor Deck represents a groundbreaking independent crowdfunding initiative driven by patriots like you to bring back our esteemed President Donald J. Trump to office. With unwavering passion, we pledge all profits from the sale to MAGA Inc. and Fight Like a Flynn PAC. The exquisitely detailed challenge coin is a timeless collectible to be passed down to generations. It symbolizes your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. Get your Donor Deck now. Go to the Patriot.tv store and click on Donor Deck. Enjoy the magnificent artwork and scripture on each playing card, knowing our appreciation for your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. You'll get this keepsake collectible challenge coin acknowledging your support for Donald Trump's run back to the White House, and the Donor Deck of 52 exquisite playing cards, plus a beautiful display case to show your challenge coin. Go to the Patriot.tv store and get your Donor Deck now.
So, the red-green axis, I want to share a couple quotes here from some important individuals that talk about that this is not just some theoretical thing. This is a practical thing that has been acknowledged over the years. Only a coalition of Marxists and Islamists can destroy the United States. Now, that was Carlos the Jackal, a very famous terrorist. But ultimately, both counterstates are Marxist-controlled. Now, the jihadis end up potentially becoming stronger than the Marxists. So I don't want that to come across wrong. But initially, especially in the 1960s and 70s, as the Muslim Brotherhood was enabled, the Marxists were in control. Now, quote, before I left Romania for good in 1978, his intelligence service had dispatched over 500 undercover agents to Islamic countries. According to a rough estimate received from Moscow by 1978, the whole Soviet bloc intelligence community had sent some 4,000 such agents of influence into the Islamic world. In other words, some of the leaders of very famous Islamic movements were actually communist agents. One such is Yasser Arafat, another one, Mahmoud Abbas. In fact, to the extent that terror attacks on airplanes were actually trained at Balashika, which is a communist right outside of Moscow, KGB training camp. They quite literally trained Islamic terrorists how to hijack airplanes. That's the level of cooperation that we're talking about here. And that also explains the rise of things like the Ba'ath Party in the Middle East. So, talking a little bit more about this, we're going to go down to the Marxists. And I want to give a picture of violent action. This is a picture that was taken on the streets where Antifa have these black and red flags. And I want to explain this from a military perspective. Those are battle flags. So when they hoisted these, they believed they were at war. And doesn't that look like they're at war? Now, it's interesting that the same black pajama-like uniforms were also similar in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, because communists do this. They call it black bloc. But you can see they're hiding their faces with masks. You can see they all have backpacks, and there's clearly organization and training that went into this. Who trained them? As you're going to hear from our guest, who funds some of them, as you're going to hear, according to our guest, is communist China. But I want to go back even further. Antifa's symbol is a symbol that originated in 1932 by the German communists who rose at that time. You can see not much different. So Antifa is directly related to the German communist movement in 1932. That's where it got its roots. Now, the understanding of that, the time frame is that Joseph Stalin sent Soviet agents, at that time NKVD, precursor to the KGB, Soviet agents into Germany to establish this organization. So at its core, at its very root, Joseph Stalin started Antifa. So we're very clear here. Now they'll try to, that's what happened. Now, if you also understand, and I want to show a picture very clearly of Antifa in Washington State, they make no bones about their intent and their violent intent. And one of these pictures is Antifa at a March for Life rally in Olympia, Washington on January 22nd, 2018. You can see him unfurling the communist flag on the steps of the Capitol. And as soon as I took that picture, he immediately tried to close it up. Also, you'll see a post from Seattle Antifa Action, February 25th, 2018. Nobody gives you power, you just take it. Interestingly, and by the way, this was up for almost at least 4 or 5 years. You see some Twitter posts by Idaho Antifa where it says, quote, punch a Nazi. Remember, kids, there are no genders, and my fists don't know gender. It's not domestic violence if she voted for Trump. Then attacking Latinos who were supporting Trump. This is disgusting. But they're very clearly, and it's not subtle, advocating violence. Now, I'm going to go into some lesser known organizations, one of which is the Socialist Rifle Association. Here is a map of and this is expanded actually since then and changed a little bit, and they took it offline. So this is the last map that we had available. These are some of the locations of the Socialist Rifle Association in the United States. You can see it's from coast to coast. Now, some people say, well, it's just, these are just leftists who want to be armed. It's like the National Rifle Association. Well, it's called the Socialist Rifle Association. And as you can see in the next post, in the Spokane chapter, they played the Soviet national anthem, which should be a slap in the face to every single Christian who immigrated here from the former Soviet Union as religious refugees, aka the Slavic community here in Spokane and across the country. You can also see a map of Redneck Revolt nationally and their places. And yes, Redneck Revolt is the actual name. I didn't make it up. So if we could show that map quickly. And then you can see in their documents that they believe in the right of militant resistance. They believe in the need for revolution and that there will have to be a, quote, complete restructuring of society. Well, interestingly enough, who said that? Well, they're quoting Vladimir Lenin, one of the mass murderers of the last century. And lastly, they published a mini manual of the urban guerrilla who was written by a Brazilian communist who was responsible for kidnapping, robbery, executions, and he also was responsible for the kidnapping in 1969 of a U.S. ambassador, Charles Burke, and was ultimately shot and killed by police there. Then you have the John Brown Gun Club. Very interesting regarding the John Brown Gun Club. They really did not like me when I was in the legislature, but I want to go to the next picture. You'll see a guy on the right there, and he had a John Brown Gun Club hat. Well, who is that man? Well, he just so happened to have been shot dead while attempting to perpetrate a terror attack in Tacoma. Amazing. Didn't hear a lot about that in the media, did you? So let's kind of go down next to the roots of communism. Karl Marx is at the root of communism. Now, most people don't know he had written a different work called The World Without Jews. Now, some people dispute that, but the fact of the matter is there's an actual title. I got this off of Amazon. And in his Communist Manifesto, which was the second work that he did, he wrote in chapter 2 the very clear ideas that he believed. He believed that communism could be summed up in the abolition of private property, that communism's goal is to abolish eternal truths, all religion, and all morality, that they needed to abolish countries and nationality. And so now you understand why they're trying to abolish borders, and also to abolish the family. Again, written in 1848. Now, in addition to that, Vladimir Lenin in 1909 wrote that the combating of religion cannot be confined to abstract ideological preaching. It must not be reduced to such preaching. It must be linked up with the concrete practice of the class movement, which aims to eliminate the social roots of religion. Well, what are the social roots of religion? A person. This is where genocide comes from, this statement by Vladimir Lenin. And then lastly, just to put a fine point on this, Karl Marx actually wrote some poetry in 1837. You can read this for yourself, but I'm going to read 2 verses here. One where he says he wishes to avenge himself against the one, capital O, who rules above, or, quote, on that enthroned being, that enthroned Lord. And then in a separate verse of poetry, he says that thus heaven he's forfeited. He knows it full well. His soul, once true to God, is chosen for hell. And I, like many pastors who have studied this, believe very clearly that Karl Marx was a Satanist. So the root of communism is Satanism. And lastly, Antonio Gramsci took all of this and began moving it into the modern era. And he very specifically said something in his writings. It was this: socialism is precisely the religion that must overwhelm Christianity. Socialism is a religion. And it's a religion that is very clearly anti-Christ. And that, today, is your briefing on communism. And now, a word from our sponsor. And when we get back, Trevor Loudon.
Patriot TV fans, feel like there's nothing on the radio for like-minded, intelligent people like yourself? Well, great news. Now you can stream Patriot TV on TuneIn during your drive to or from work. Whether you're stuck in traffic or cruising down the highway, you can catch every conversation from your favorite show hosts right in your car. No more mindless jibber-jabber. Tune in 24/7 on the road, at the gym, or wherever you are. Download the free TuneIn app now on Apple, Android, or your computer and never miss a beat. Patriot TV, now on TuneIn.
Now we have it. Kingdom Crunch.
It's important to start breakfast off with a power-packed punch. You want a complete amino acid score, good protein. If you turn the label over and look at the back of the box, there is no added sugars in either one of these flavors, either peanut butter or acai bowl.
Peanut butter has 11 grams of high-quality protein. Acai bowl has 8. Peanut butter has 11 grams of carbohydrate, acai bowl 12, and both of them have a good solid fat content at 6 grams. Very filling, very healthy.
You will be fueling yourself with high-quality fuel, starting off the day right. You can even use Kingdom Crunch as a snack in the middle of the day if you just have a craving and you want to eat something that is good for you, it has a crunch, and doesn't have a lot of calories.
There you go. Diabetic friendly, keto friendly, paleo friendly, Kingdom Crunch, and
Child friendly.
And our guest today is Trevor Loudon, an expert on the radical left, Marxists, and the terrorist movements and their covert influence on mainstream U.S. politics here in the United States. TrevorLoudon.com, keywiki.org. Trevor, it is great to have you back on Patriot Radio today. How are you doing?
It's always good to catch up, Matt. How are you doing?
We're doing great out here in Washington. +2 is what it looks like for us, practically here in Washington State. Washington's starting to turn, which I think that should be an encouragement to the rest of the country.
Well, this is what I'm seeing all around. A lot of the red counties and blue areas are getting very aggressive, getting much more organized and focused. So, yeah, I'm glad to hear that's happening in Washington, but I'm not surprised. There's, there's so many patriots in Washington.
So many, yes. Well, you've written a new book, Stealth, about Kamala Harris's communist roots. I think a lot of people kind of sense that that's the case, but you've done a lot of exhaustive research proving that's the case. If you could share with your listeners what you've discovered.
Well, basically, there's a network of pro-Chinese communists that have been working to infiltrate the Democratic Party and other institutions since the 1980s. And they gave us Barack Obama. They gave us Andrew Gillum in Florida. They gave us Stacey Abrams in Georgia. But their jewel in the crown is really Kamala Harris. She is part of this Maoist network that's been operating. She grew up in this. Her parents were involved in it. She's never really been anything but a communist. And what I've really discovered is that the massive influence these Chinese communist pro-Chinese voting patterns of various states, they've very much inserted their way into the elections to the benefit of Kamala Harris and her comrades.
Well, I just saw a tweet this morning in regards to Tim Walz. I want to just read this. It's very interesting that some of this stuff is coming out right before the election. I guess it shouldn't really surprise us, but this is from Insider Paper. Chinese Communist Party saw Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as a prime target for its influence operations in the United States, according to internal Department of Homeland Security communications shared the same day that Vice President Kamala Harris picked him as her running mate, the New York Post reports. So it's not just Kamala Harris who has connections to the communists, but it's also clearly Tim Walz.
Yeah, well, we have a bonus section in the Kamala Harris book dedicated to Tim Walz, and we detail his deep ties, long, deep ties to the Chinese Communist Party, but also the Minnesota Communist Party, also the Wellstone movement in Minnesota, which is a deeply communist movement as well. So everywhere you look around Tim Walz, he's got communist background. So I think it was always going to be Tim Walz because Walz comes from the same pro-Chinese communist faction in Minnesota that Kamala Harris comes out of in the Bay Area. They're related. Two branches of the same organization.
So how does this work? How does this elite capture mechanism of the Chinese work? How did they get around Kamala Harris? How did they get around Tim Walz?
Well, Kamala was brought up in it, from day one. Her parents were both involved. But what happened in the 1980s? In the 1960s and 70s, you had a lot of Maoist students in America. The SDS and the Weathermen, all these radicals who supported the communist side in the Vietnam War. They grew up in the 80s. And in the 80s, the signal came down, start to infiltrate the institutions. So they infiltrated a lot of the non-profits, a lot of the business world, a lot of the a lot of the unions, and especially the Democratic Party. So starting in the 80s with Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition, which was completely run by Maoists when he ran for president twice, that network has been ongoing right through. It's been operating in Minnesota, in Illinois with Barack Obama, in the Bay Area, where it's centered really. The Chinese influence really came into America through the Bay Area. So Kamala's always been at ground zero. All the people around her from day one to now are Maoists, pro-Chinese leaning communists.
What is their goal? And, it's interesting that Xi Jinping came to San Francisco to meet with U.S. business leaders. I mean, I find that fascinating as well, a direct connection.
Well, their goal is, it's multifaceted right now. Their goal is to get so much control over American business and American economics and American government that the American government is a subsidiary of the Communist Party of China. So, and they're halfway there now. But the ultimate goal after that is to destroy this country and its population and occupy the United States with Chinese nationals. They've got massive economic problems. They've got massive agricultural problems, population problems, social problems. They need to settle a large chunk of their population on our soil. So they're using illegal immigration, they're using fentanyl, they're using biological warfare, economic warfare, and political warfare to so weaken the United States that can be accomplished, that we can be destroyed.
So what are the main organizations here in the United States that are pro-Chinese, that are funded by the Chinese, and probably, I would say most definitely, infiltrated by Chinese intelligence?
Well, you've got a major influence network at the top called the Committee of 100. This was started by Henry Kissinger in the 90s. And that has a lot of Chinese businessmen, communists, and they lobby at the highest levels of the US government. Then you've got the Democracy Alliance, which was started by a San Francisco Marxist called Steve Phillips, who married into the Sandler fortune of San Francisco, working with Soros and Tom Steyer and Norman Lear. And this provides the money for the voter registration groups and all this kind of thing. And then you've got the communist networks on the ground, the Liberation Road Group, which gave us Black Lives Matter, the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, which did all the looting and burning and anarchy when George Floyd was killed in Minnesota. And they have a network of voter registration organizations in the key swing states. Like in Nevada, in Arizona, they have Lucha. They have New Virginia Majority in Virginia, the Carolina Federation in Carolina, the Detroit Action in Michigan, Pennsylvania Stands Up in Pennsylvania, Black Leaders Organizing Communities in Wisconsin. So all the key swing states, they have these Chinese-backed voter registration organizations in the inner cities using Black Lives Matter volunteers to stuff ballots. We saw this in Catherine Engelbrecht's movie 2000 Mules. Well, she identified that through cell phone data. I identified it through tracking the networks coming out of the Chinese consulate in San Francisco.
So this is a complete operation tied directly to Chinese intelligence to undermine the United States of America, no question about it.
Look, 100%. This is a whole of government thing. It operates through business. It operates through the senior wing of the Democratic Party, some elements of the Republican Party, like Mitch McConnell, for instance, who just loves trashing MAGA candidates. And these big grassroots voter registration organizations that emanate out of the Chinese Progressive Association of San Francisco, a major lobby group that controls San Francisco, which is run by the Chinese consulate. So you got this at every level. So the China's trying to bring us down through fentanyl, through control of Hollywood, through control of sport, woke sport, but through the unions, which are almost all now Chinese controlled, and obviously biological attacks like COVID, Black Lives Matter, another Chinese operation, and massive election interference, which has been going on since at least 2007. This is not new. That there's just accelerating under Biden, Harris, and under Obama.
So several Chinese thinkers actually have said that the way to attack the United States is through the election system here in the United States and also using our own systems against us. The jihadis have said that, but also the Chinese communists.
I think his name is. He's a top Chinese, one of the chief advisors to Xi Jinping. He did an audience in Remnen University a few years ago when he talked about we have to get China inside the US and the US inside China so they cannot fight us. And we have to have organizations in all 435 congressional districts that can influence the politics in those districts to the degree that the US Congress becomes an appendage of the People's Parliament of China. He explicitly stated this. And so they do this with these voter registration organizations, but also businesses. If they put a big battery plant in your congressional district, they have so much economic power that that district will never elect another congressman who criticizes China. So all the Chinese businesses that come in have a political purpose. You know, they say, we're going to bring this wonderful battery plant or a tire plant or whatever, and it's going to employ 12,000 people in your state. But it's also going to take over the politics of your state. So Republican or Democrat, it'll be controlled congressmen that will never dare to criticize the CCP and will act in accordance with what the CCP wants. So it's a whole of government, super organized, super focused plan to take over the Congress and the Senate of the United States. And Kamala Harris is right at the core of this and will completely enact the CCP's agenda if she is, God forbid, elected.
And this is regardless of party. I think this is a key point. it doesn't matter Democrat or Republican. This elite capture is regarding both parties, and very subtly done in some ways, as you're saying.
Well, look, they get the left, they get the Democrats through ideology and money, because many of the Democrats are communists, so they're sympathetic to communist China. They get the Republicans through money, the Mitch McConnells of the world. And there are a lot of compromised Republican governors. But I wouldn't call it moral, I wouldn't call it equivalence. The Democratic Party is completely controlled by China. Parts of the Republican Party are controlled by China. Now, what the Democrats and Kamala Harris intends to do, this is what she'll do if she is president. She will legalize 40 million illegals and give them citizenship and voting rights. That'll be well over 30 million new Democratic voters overnight. She will abolish the Electoral College, so it's popular vote only, and she'll pack the Supreme Court so you can't appeal to the Supreme Court, and she'll use the organs of state to come down on conservative Christians, Republican Party donors, anybody, conservative media, anybody who stands in the way of the agenda. So if Kamala Harris wins the next election, we are 70% there to a communist state. If the Republicans win, I think we have a chance of pushing it back. We have to purge the Republican Party of its pro-Chinese elements, but Trump is not pro-China. He will stand against at least some of this stuff.
And from what you're saying, it sounds like a communist revolution if Kamala Harris wins.
100%. The book is called Stealth, Kamala Harris's Communist Roots. Wasn't liberal roots, progressive roots, or even socialist roots. Communist roots. She's been a red diaper baby. She's been a communist since the cradle. Waltz has been a communist all his adult life. Their goal is to finish the job Obama started, and Biden in his meddling way continued. They will destroy the conservative movement in this country if they can, all the conservative churches, and will establish a one-party state. She is as communist as Fidel Castro or Hugo Chavez. There is no daylight between them as far as communism goes.
Back here with Trevor Loudon, trevorloudon.com, keywiki.org. And when he comes back, we're going to be talking about what happens after the election.
Attention patriotic businesses. Do you want to see your sales skyrocket by selling your products or services to like-minded patriots? Well, if you're an advertiser who embodies the timeless principles of freedom, liberty, and patriotism, look no further than Patriot TV. Our viewers are responsive, economically active patriots who are committed to supporting businesses like yours that align with their values. For more information on advertising on America's new network of proud American businesses, email us at advertise@patriot.tv.
I couldn't give anything a higher endorsement.
I would be remiss had I not include Cardio Miracle on my very short list of secrets.
It's the real deal. It's a real product. It's not another supplement.
I'm operating about 6 to 8 hours, and I've noticed that being on this Cardio Miracle has made a huge difference.
Since I started taking Cardio Miracle about 8 months into it, the benefits have been fantastic.
If I get hungry, then I just have a Cardio Miracle.
Not only is it safe, but it's necessary to take Cardio Miracle to stay well.
This let me sleep. It's showing up more energy, more get up and go, and it's all because of what this company does.
For me as a doctor, Cardio Miracle is a staple.
Cardio Miracle to me is hope in a glass.
To try Cardio Miracle for yourself and get a special fan discount, go to the host page right now and click the link for Cardio Miracle.
And we're back with Trevor Loudon, author of the book Stealth, Kamala Harris's Communist Roots, trevorloudon.com, keywiki.org. Trevor, what happens after the election if the communists are this far infiltrated and they lose the election? Donald Trump is elected, the House goes Republican, the Senate goes Republican. It would seem that at that point, they may actually resort to violence.
Well, I'd be very, very surprised if they do not. And I do not say this to discourage people from voting. I absolutely want President Trump to win and the Republicans to take the House and the Senate, not because all the Republicans are so marvelous, but because there are some decent ones in there who will defend the country. And the Democrats are communists now, unfortunately. So, look, we've got upwards maybe 100,000 foreign nationals of military age, but that we believe are military trained in the country that have come across the southern border from China, from Russia, from Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Chechnya, Venezuela, Colombia, Cuba. They're not coming here to go to Vegas. They are here to corrupt, right? Plus, we've got probably 500,000 young American radicals who are just itching to have a go. We saw them erupt, last time President Trump was elected. Well, and we saw them again under Black Lives Matter. I think it's going to be way worse. Plus, I think we also have a whole bunch of illegal immigrants who are going to be very upset they're about to be deported. So there's a real, like if you need medicines, if you don't have food supply, food stocks, you got to have medicines, you got to have food supplies, you got to know where your family are, you got to act as though we're going to have a period of major civil disruption, power outages, shortages, etc. I hope none of that happens, but I'll eat my car if it doesn't. It's very likely to happen. But the way through that, if we are prepared, if we are organized and we are disciplined, the way through that chaos is the road back to a free America. The left are going to act out when the day they lose, and I believe it's likely they will lose. I read the left publications. They are almost resigned to a loss here.
Yep.
They are thinking they're probably going to lose. So, but they will not go easily, and there will be constitutional crises. Jamie Raskin, for instance, is talking about the Democrat from Maryland is talking about not certifying the election. Jamie Raskin is the son of Marcus Raskin, who founded the KGB-controlled Institute for Policy Studies. So that tells you his pedigree. So the revolutionaries will not go easy, but we have to go through that and fight our way back. No, I don't mean physically, but fight our way back, get control of the country again. And President Trump's going to have to start defunding and prosecuting and expelling enemies of this country if we are to survive.
And at the very local level, county prosecutors, county sheriffs need to start investigating and disrupting these networks, especially in the major metropolitan areas or surrounding the major metropolitan areas here in this country.
Well, the gangs, the gangs, the drug gangs, the foreign terrorists that are operating with impunity on the soil. Hamas and Hezbollah have been bringing people in here for a long time. And Los Angeles is full of these people right now, from Turkey, from Uzbekistan, Chechnya. They're getting houses. They're getting houses and cars when they come here, and they're basically doing Uber Eats and rideshare apps, casing out all the places, learning the city. And I'm hearing reports from police and that they're getting ready for major incidents straight after the election. Some of this may happen before the election to try and disrupt it. Every day we get through and think, we got through today. We didn't have a terrorist attack. We didn't have a riot. Great. Let's just keep praying and keep working, and maybe we'll get to the election without it. And maybe on election night, Kamala Harris will say, the better man won. Thank you, President Trump. Best of luck in bringing America back to peace and prosperity. I'll retire. Well, that could happen, and pigs might fly. I think it is very unlikely we're going to see a clean transfer of power.
Well, I want to dovetail on that, a clean transfer of power. She's in charge of the Senate as the tie-breaking vote, but also overseeing the official certification, or the recognition is probably the more proper way to say it, certification. So what happens then?
She has to certify her own election. You can see potential problems there, can you not? You can see potential constitutional crises looming. In the House, Jamie Raskin refuses to certify. In the Senate, Kamala Harris refuses to certify. What the heck do you do then?
Right.
What do you do? So you can't rely on the military to step in and arrest people, because the military is probably more on their side. The leadership is more on their side than ours.
And that brings up another point. Well, what about our adversaries?
The Justice Department, yeah.
Go ahead with the Justice Department.
Well, the Justice Department is also on their side, controlled by the enemy. So So if they just choose to disobey the law, there's problems right there. Major constitutional problems. But I think you were going to talk about our external enemies, perhaps.
Yeah, I was going to talk about China. I mean, we're seeing China do some things. It doesn't look like they're going to invade Taiwan before the election, but very clearly they play the long game. They have a 50-year plan where the United States is barely looking out 1 year. What do the Chinese do? Yeah.
Well, the Chinese, look, I think they could start to blockade Taiwan in the lame duck period when we've got a chaos in America. I think, and I don't think Taiwan's their main target. I think we are their main target.
Agreed.
Taiwan is more of a diversion than anything. So do we see a general insurrection in America? Do we see 100,000 Chinese in this country just go on the rampage, blowing up power stations, assassinating town mayors? I hate to sound like a Jeremiah, I really do, but they are here. We know they're here. They're here for a reason. What is that reason other than to create chaos? Why would they be here if they're not to create chaos? We know they're here. So I think Chinese will do a whole bunch of stuff. The Cubans will be part of that. The North Koreans, the Russians will put their little spoke in as well. So I think a lot of, Hezbollah, Hamas, all of them, we could see major chaos.
And on the university campuses, they have a ready-made tinderbox because there are many students from China are part of the Chinese intelligence apparatus on our universities all over the country.
Absolutely. I think there's 1 million Chinese nationals in Southern California alone. You do not get to America if you haven't made a deal with the CCP. You do not get to America as a student unless you're trusted by the CCP. That's at least 10% of the Chinese students in America are reporting directly to the intelligence services. So all of this is Trojan horse. This is fifth column stuff. What do they do? Because are they really going to just wait for President Trump to rebuild the military, get close the borders, get everything back in shape, and then take them down? Or are they going to hit us when we're at our weakest? I know what I would do if I was Xi Jinping, but what can we do? We can protect our families as best we can. We can protect our communities and get ready for disruption, and we can vote and vote and vote and vote. Just get that election won. So Trump has a very clear mandate on election night. That's going to make any constitutional challenges so much harder. So it is vote. Everybody's got to vote. Everybody who can vote has to vote, but get ready for disruption. And if you don't, if there is no disruption and I'm completely wrong, you can have enough baked beans to last you for a couple of years. That's the worst that can happen.
Exactly right. And lastly, North Korea, very weird moves lately. You see North Korean troops now on the front lines in Kursk, getting ready to start assaults against the Ukrainian military. How do you read this? How do you evaluate this? They're also shifting artillery down toward the south and ammunition stockpiles down toward the south, toward the border with South Korea. What does this mean in the next 60 days?
Well, look, I think we've got to see all of these wars, all of these fronts. See, America, look, the Ukraine war is the first front of the combined Russian-Chinese attack on the West. Israel was the second front, and that's not going so well for Iran. North Korea and China are fronts 3 and 4, and front 5 is what's coming over the border and what's already here. So we could be in a 5-front war within weeks. And I'd say if Kamala Harris gets in, we will be, and we will lose. We could be in a 5-front war after Trump gets in too, but at least we'll have a fighting chance. And at least he'll be already beginning the deportations and that kind of thing. So it's, we're going to need God's help to get through this. We really are. Either way, we're going to need God's help. So this is the time for people getting right, people getting their life sorted out, people getting physically prepared and mentally prepared for what's coming. We're coming into a time of many fronts, but as I say, the way through this is the way back to a free America. I'm not a pessimist here. I'm just trying to let people know to prepare for some pretty heavy stuff, and hopefully I'll look a big idiot in 3 weeks and everybody will be stocked up to their roof with tuna and baked beans and whatever else they get.
Trevor, I want to give you an opportunity. Where can people buy the book Stealth? And also, where can they go to do more research, find out more, educate their friends and family on the communist networks in the United States?
Well, you go to the quickest way to get the book right now, straight to Amazon. You'll get it in a couple of days. Stealth, Kamala Harris's Communist Roots on Amazon. I have several other books there too. If you want signed copies for Christmas or gifts, go to trevorloudon.com and I will personally sign them with the message of your choice. And I urge you to refer to my main website, but I've also got a website you referred to earlier, keywiki.org, KEYWIKI.org. That's got 168,000 files of American radicals, communists, senators, presidential candidates, street-level radicals, your local chapter of Democratic Socialists of America, your local congressmen and state reps. It's like the Wikipedia of American communism. And you'll find your state reps, your local Congress members there, files on their trips to Cuba and their trips to China and whatever. So keywiki.org, Amazon, or trevorloudon.com for the books.
Trevor Loudon, thank you for joining me on Patriot Radio today. Just really appreciate your diligence, your consistency, and you never give up the fight. So we just honor you for that. And thank you for being a voice. Sometimes, at least 5-10 years ago, was a voice almost in the wilderness. Now it's starting to gain traction, and I think America is the better off for it.
Well, thank you very much. And I always appreciated you, Matt. I know how you've fought in the political realms and the churches and now on radio for so long and so diligently. So just great to be part of the same team, Matt.
Amen. Trevor Loudon, thank you again for joining me. Keep up the fight. TrevorLoudon.com, keywiki.org, and he's the author of the book Stealth, Kamala Harris's Communist Roots. As we go into this season, Trevor was talking very specifically about what you can do to be prepared. One of the things that I want to mention about what you can do is to pray in reformation. It doesn't just end with you voting. It doesn't just end with the election. It doesn't just end with Donald Trump becoming president. It's going to take all of us to turn this country around. We're going to need to pray in reformation, but we have to move from prayer to action. And the action that you can take right now is to get all of your friends, all of your family out to vote. Make sure that you send them a text message. Send them a text message on election day. Send them a text message now. Send them an email now. Give them a phone call. But choose 10 people in your sphere of influence right now to get out the vote. And get out the vote for America. A return to constitutional principles. A return to Christianity and to Jesus Christ. And for those of you out there that don't know Jesus, now is the best time. Today is the best time to give your life to Jesus Christ. It's a very simple prayer, and you can pray it at any time. Acknowledge him as both your Lord and your Savior, that you're a sinner, and that you want to be saved by grace through your faith in Jesus, and that his blood covers you and washes away all that sin. It's as simple as that. And so this is more than just a turn in America's history. I think this is a return to Jesus Christ as well. This is Matt Shea. Thank you for joining me on Patriot Radio today. May God bless all of you. This is the greatest generation. The awakening is here. Keep up the fight.